Welcome to this video. Thanks so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. I just wanted to go into a little bit of a flow. A lot going on energetically. How are we feeling? I'm going to invite everybody just to kind of take a few breaths and get into the heart space. We are in a heightened state of just energetic up-leveling, and it's kind of constant. So I just want to remind everybody that a lot of the videos that I've shared recently have been about being patient with ourselves, caring for our bodies, taking breaths, getting into the heart as regularly as possible. As the stories that are going on outside around us, this channeling I'm about to share is about the chatter, I think, in the mind. So we'll kind of go from there. It's calming the chatter in the mind so that we can hear the sound behind the sound, so that we can hear our deeper innate voice that is sharing with us so much. Okay, so as I do this, I'm just dropping into my heart, expanding inward to expand outward. And as we gain clarity, as we clear the chatter that is going on all around us, and we begin to organize the scattered frequencies that are seeking to gather our energy, to gather our attention, and we turn our attention inward, we begin to change our focal point. We begin to reorganize the scatter rings, play on words, rings, and we begin to create a different thing, play on words. So a different concept, a different frequency. We begin to connect the rings, so to speak, connect the dots. We allow ourselves to create from a different perspective, a different point of view that holds less of the, I'm just hearing other people's chatter. And this is something that's kind of an ongoing subject for sure, because everybody, I'm hearing that song, everybody's talking at me. Is that I can't hear what they're saying, only the echoes of my mind, in my mind, something along those lines. So I'm seeing an echo, and basically there's this cavern that's our brain, and we are in this space of these echoes, and it's like bouncing around. We've got a lot of signals that are bouncing around. Even as I do my sharing and channeling, if I don't hone into my heart space, it's difficult to actually share some of the messages that are coming through because there's so many signals. So I have to somehow fine tune to find the tune in order to linearize some of the messages that are coming through. And for those of you guys who've watched my channel over the years, sometimes the energy comes in so strong, I could just play with the words and play with the language, and it doesn't come through in the same way. And so I'll play with that for a moment. I'm being called to do that. I'm hearing, let's take it up a notch. And so there is an amount of letting go in order to allow this type of energy to flow, in order to allow it to come through in a stabilized network of frequencies, in order to shift the point of view, point of perspective, the perspective point of view that we are holding and accessing from a different energy glue, the glue on that glues it together, that creates the framework that we are able to then access and view in this point of view, feel into the feel. This is a play on words. For as we allow ourselves to access in this way, we heighten the ability to display what is being shown and accessed on the blendable mode, the board, the motherboard, the game board, the frequency board, the board of conduction. The conduction, I'm hearing all aboard. So Those are several different styles that we could play with. Shall I keep going? So let me slow it down. So as I drop in and I harmonize with a different type of frequency, it allows me to stabilize in a different type of way, in a different relevancy. We begin to speak from a different codex, one might say, or a different order or organization of information that comes through in a much more organized way. Yet both are different ways to play with these energies, and there is no incoherence in either one. It is a matter of how we choose to play with the energies that are dropping in. And as we drop into these frequencies and energies, as we allow ourselves to come within, in the integers, within this integral exchange and part of our situation that we have situated ourselves in, that's a play on words. It allows us to shift with the situation. It allows us to change how we organize our thought processes. So throughout the day, we are called to go within and recognize the pictures that are all around us, that are seeking to gather our attention and our awareness, to recognize our thought patterns that are creating chatter. Are we able to gather the chatter and organize it in such a way that we are able to then differentiate between what is ours and with what we choose to play with? For many of us are playing different notes and different songs and different sounds through vibration and frequency, and we are matching that frequency and vibration. Therefore, if we are only tuning into everyone else's chatter, we are unable to match the frequency that is really our signature frequency. So I'm being called to play with that for a moment. Whew. We all have a signature frequency. It's a sound, a vibration that we put out that ripples out into the field. We're playing, we're having an experience. And the more open we are to the experiences that we're having, the more fun we have with it. The more we're able to stabilize heart coherence, the more fun we're able to have with it, the higher our vibration will be. And when I say fun, it's like bliss, joy, enjoyment. We begin to enjoy our interaction with the field rather than feeling completely overwhelmed by the chatter and the, and this is a play on words, by the way. I'm being called to stop, drop a note. I have to adjust my light too. It's very bright right now. So let me just pause. So if you look up chatter, we hear chatter like other people talking, background noise, chatter, but I see it here. It's the undesirable phenomena of oscillations having finite frequency and amplitude in sliding mode control. Ooh, let's play with that. So what I see when I read that is I see it as finite. It's not infinite, it's finite. So therefore it isn't completely, what's the right, we're being called to recognize that a lot of that chatter is not necessarily an infinite pattern of fractality. So it's negentropy versus entropy. So the chatter is finite, therefore making it entropy. And so let's go over that briefly too, because I know some people watching don't know what that means. Okay, well, there's a lot on Wikipedia about that, but let's just say it's organized versus unorganized. When we're negentrop, lots of big words here. Bottom line is the chatter is scattered. It isn't infinite, it's finite, it's unorganized, and it isn't something that assists us in maintaining our stability or creating that long wave that Dan Winter always talks about. So negentropy, it doesn't bring us back into unification and wholeness. It actually pulls us into a finite, not self-organizing energy. And that's not what we're working towards. We're working towards finding this balance and synergy, right? So chatter, if we talk about, oh, this is kind of fun. Let's play with this. So the undesirable phenomenon of oscillations, and they're showing a coil or a slinky. Oh, okay. So in my reality, this is a clue for what I've been speaking about in regards to the coils and the slinkies in the brain. So when we are having a lot of chatter going on, thoughts and things going on around us that are pulling us in many different directions, the slinkies and coils in the brain, and we could think of the spinal coil, the kundalini, it isn't able to reach the state of negentropy that allows it to oscillate at a long wave. Well, I'm hearing variance, but that's not exactly the right word. That's a play on words. We're looking for bliss. We're looking for the fractal. We're looking for the infinite. And when I say fractal, it's fractal versus fractured, right? So we're being called to bring it back into wholeness and oneness. And so when we have oscillation, it's the repetitive or periodic variation, typically in time, of some measure about a central value or between two or more different states. Familiar examples of oscillation include a swinging pendulum and an alternating current, AC. And I'm being called to play with this a bit, so I will. It talks about they can be used to approximate complex interactions such as those between atoms. So oscillations covers a lot, but let's talk about this with nerve cells, because the previous video that I did was about the brain codes that I've been writing about. And this is talking about the periodic firing of nerve cells. So within a nervous system, a neuron, or nerve cell is an electrically charged, excitable cell that fires electrical signals called action potentials across a neural network. Neurons communicate with other cells via synapses, specialized connections that commonly use minute amounts of chemical neurotransmitters. But we'll come back to this. The reason I'm being called to talk about this is the words that I'm using to play with oftentimes in these channelings are to activate a recognition about what's going on inside of our bodies. If we are listening to this chatter and we're not listening to our inner oscillations, so it's a little bit about repetitive patterns, where a lot of times people are listening to these repetitive patterns outside of themselves. And this has to do with time. So, and about value between two or more different states. So we're not able to necessarily value our time. I mean, I could go into so many different directions here. Our time isn't as valuable because we aren't utilizing it as coherently as we can, number one. Or we don't see the value in it as much because we're unable to differentiate between two or more different states, recognizing this one's a higher vibration, recognizing this one's a lower vibration. This is my chatter that I've got going on, and this is someone else's chatter. And then recognizing even the next layer of that, which is, okay, my chatter. I'm aware, I'm inside now in my own space, my own bubble, my own subset, and I recognize I'm thinking about the bills I have to pay, the chores I have to do, the dinner I have to cook, whatever it might be. That is also chatter. Even though that is mine, there is a lack of depth to that. It is a noise box that is sometimes created from a habitual pattern, repetitive or periodic variation, typically in time, measuring certain things. So we're being called to recognize this, and rather than having this scattered energy, bring it into breathing it in, breathing it out, making that oscillation and that wave the long wave rather than these short, scattered, chattered energies. This also talks that what that does is that increases our amplitude. It amplifies our inner coils of our brain. It allows our neurotransmitters to connect, to make those connections, and that's even a play on words. Because when that happens, we have all this chatter going on. When we still and calm that, when we're able to bring ourselves into oneness, all of that stuff falls into place, meaning it all of a sudden becomes quieter, and we are able to kind of make decisions, and we're able to, and I'm going to use this as an example, they're talking about sliding. So it's called a sliding mode control. And I know these aren't, I play with these words to help make sense of life. So let's just play with that for a moment. In control systems, sliding mode control is a non-linear control method that alters the dynamics of a non-linear system by applying a discontinuous control system, or more rigorously a set valued control signal that forces the system to slide along a cross section of the system's normal behavior. Ooh. The state feedback control law is not a continuous function of time. Instead, it can switch from one continuous structure to another based on the current position in the state space. Oh boy, it's talking about a hypersurface. So as I read this, I see the other meanings behind the meaning behind the meaning. I see the quantum signal. My brain is picking up on more meanings than just the basic meaning. The basic keep it simple starseed meaning is we're able to then slide into home base, right? We're able to slide into the base, and then we're able to calculate from that place in space, from that moment in time, from that placement system, we can feel our feedback because the state that we're in, which is a coherent state, and we're able to negotiate our alignment better. We can all of a sudden see, okay, this person's playing with that. That means I need to go here. And this has to do with us actually organizing our thought patterns, organizing our daily activities, and how we are interacting with our environment and how our environment is responding to us through this. And essentially, I feel called to really dive into this, but I don't have the time. So I will come back to this because I feel like this is a quantum explanation of something else that's going on with our relationship with time. And so this was just introduced to me, and I was paying attention to the words, and then I tune into that and I utilize it for other applications. So that's another message that's coming through. Sometimes we overcomplicate things or we oversimplify things, and we're not really noticing the details, or we're paying too much attention to the details. So we're paying too much attention to the chatter. It's overwhelming. And other times we just push it all away and shut down. So there is this balance that we're trying to find right now. And this has a lot to do with the electrical stimulation that's going on within our body and outside of our bodies, through the sun, through the discharge that's happening in the plasma from the solar activity, but also the heightened electronics, EMFs, all of it. And there's more, but we're countering that the more often we're able to go into coherence. So I'll play with that in a little bit more detail, potentially in another video. So I'll kind of continue with the whole chatter. So as we allow ourselves to tune into the mechanisms of the body, we begin to utilize our instrument as the finest tuning fork there is in our reality. For we are a walking conductor of frequency and energy. And I'm hearing if the shoe fits. So this has something to do with a shoe horn. It has something to do with physics, basically. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. So we are able to then map out our reality and our interaction with it in such a way that it heightens our availability, our ability to see and to play with what is available to us. For many of us are overwhelmed by the words and the programs that are happening outside of us. I'm using this word a lot because it really is about us. So brain hemisync meditations are good. You can look on the Monroe Institute. They have a lot of incredible tools. And what's the other one? The Monroe Institute. But either way, it's about us recognizing it's our perception and our perspective also. So when we're able to shut all that down and essentially compost it, digest it, integrate it, transmute it, that outside noise, even if it's coming from inside of us, it allows us to then recalibrate our frequency in such a way that we're able to interact with, I'm just hearing we reach new levels of awareness, obviously. But this is about our everyday interactions. This is about our habits and how the frequency has been ramped up. The stories have been ramped up, in case you guys haven't noticed. And it's ramping everybody else up. So it's revving up everybody's engines. And there's a lot of people that are unable to control that chatter. And they're having meltdowns. They're having emotional, I'm seeing people's energy, they're not able to stabilize their energy. They're having burnout. And many of us have been there, done that. And it's not to say that it won't happen again. For me, I have to be very careful when I know I've got a lot of activations and a lot of Kundalini energy. I can easily burn myself out and end up needing to just sleep for a week. And who has time for that, really? So it is about us really managing our human potential in such a way that we're able to maximize our potential, right? Manage to maximize. And it comes from us keeping things simple and doing the basics. And there's so much more we could speak about on this particular reflection. For there are many different reflections that are being bounced back at us right now from many different angles. And this is a plan where it's also for the story or the paradigm of us versus them, all of that is being reflected back to us out of the mirrored effect of separation. The seeming separation that we are all experiencing in this reality, for that is part of the reason we came to this reality, was to experience that particular reflection as a piece, a spark of source energy. And yet a spark is never separate from the source that it originated from. So as we have this experience on earth, we are being called in this now moment to focus our internal direction and angle in such a way that we are recognizing the angles of others, if we wish to call them others. We are recognizing, because we are centered, what angle it is that they are coming from, what angle it is that they are perceiving us from. And while we may not agree with their angled ways, or we may not agree with where it is they are coming from, we're being called to hold our angle in such a way that we can reflect back to them the light that we are, in order to highlight how it is that we are reflecting that light. So I'm just seeing the heart shining out and saying, I see you. I recognize that this is the angle that you're coming from. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, but when we hold our field and we clear out all the noise, rather than, I'm seeing people listening to other people and then getting sucked into the other people's stories, whether that's on TV or in conversation or at work or whatever it might be. And I'm also seeing this bringing up our own, and this is a whole other video, but this can bring up our insecurities, things that we aren't sure about in ourselves. I'm seeing that as being another subject matter. So maybe I'll do a video on that. It's like a collective purging that's going on around, really around fear right now. Fear and insecurity and lack of control. But what people don't realize is if they're controlling that chatter in such a way, by letting go, getting back into the heart and recognizing the distortions, and that other person's angle might be a distorted perspective, but that's their perspective. That's not up to us to change their reflection. We are the ones sending out the signal because we are able to create that long wave, because we are able to control And that isn't about us holding on to something rigidly, but we're able to control our own oscillations, our own wave patterns. And we're creating these patterns that are literally weaving together the new reality, the new version of Earth, the new version of these higher dimensions. So I'm going to kind of end on that note and then maybe do a second part talking about continuous function and, you know, some of the physics around this, and just play with it because it's fun for me. And I think informative too for some people that might be tuning in. Until then, in love and light, namaste.